we're going to focus on happiness, actually. So we're going to revisit that topic just a little bit in the context of contrasting happiness with what we're working with this week. Okay, so hopefully that will help to frame things for you in a way that will be helpful for you to engage with the practice more effectively this week. So this article here outlines a very specific definition of what happiness is, which I think is helpful. So that's what I'm going to work with tonight. And it's very similar to a lot of the other psychological studies that they've published. So happiness is basically defined in psychology as a subjective state of well-being. And it encompasses three main subjective states that we can think about. The first is affect. Okay, so affective well-being is what they call that. And this is the topic that our joy and our positive emotions, pleasurable experiences fall into. Okay, so joy would be part of what we would call a positive affect. All right, so joy in this sense can be a component of experiencing happiness or subjective well-being. Eudaimonic well-being is basically having a sense of meaning and purpose in the world, in your life. And evaluative well-being is life satisfaction. So let's look at those three things a little bit more closely. So if we look at affective well-being, this is experiencing positive feelings and mood states. Okay, so let's look at that a little bit more closely right now. A mood, they define often as a, well, let's talk about it this way. A feeling is a temporary state which usually is related to some kind of object. Okay, our relation with an objective experience. Whereas a mood, again, in psychological terms, a mood is a state which is more free floating. Okay, so it's not necessarily related to an object or a situation, and it's more sustained. Okay, so when we talk about positive affect, we would be talking about experience positive feelings, so fleeting experiences, or positive mood states, such as happiness, joy, elation, vitality, pleasure, and cheerfulness. And I made a note here, equanimity balances hedonism, because there's always a fine line between seeking out pleasurable experiences, right? And craving pleasurable experiences, which can be self-destructive, okay? So equanimity, which is what we will be talking about next week, balances any tendency we might be feeling towards craving, okay? So in affective well-being, if you're trying to achieve positive affect, there are basically two steps, which are logical. The first would be to decrease negative affect. So do things that combat depression, stress, anxiety, those kind of emotional experiences that we would call negative. Most of psychology for a long time had been focused on methods to decrease negative states. Now there's more interest in the positive psychology movement on how we can increase positive affect and improve our positive well-being and cultivate happiness. Okay, so this affective well-being is really what we're working with when we're doing our metta meditation, and specifically when we're working with the positive emotion of joy. Eudaimonic well-being involves judgments about the realization of personal potential and fulfillment of life goals. So remember, we're saying happiness is a subjective state, because happiness is actually a state that is governed by how we think about what is going on. Happiness is related to our relationship with ourself and our personal experiences and how those are affecting me. Okay. And then how I'm thinking about those things. So aspects of evaluating meaning and purpose involve or are related to skills like flourishing, having a sense of autonomy, feeling that you're growing, okay, personal growth, environmental mastery, so having control over your environment, having positive relationships with other people, and self-acceptance. So the third category within the subjective well-being happiness framework is called evaluative well-being. And this is basically our judgment about the quality of our life and how good our life is. So you can see that when we hear people say things like happiness is a choice, okay, if we think about happiness in this context, understanding that it's really a subjective state, we can understand the truth of that statement. And we can also understand how it's possible for us to learn to be happier, because much of our experience of our degree of happiness has to do with the way that we're framing our experiences and how we're judging them. Okay.